Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel, where today we're going to get into a schema that sits at the core for many people who rely on addictive, obsessive, or compulsive coping mechanisms, not necessarily as a primary schema that's tied to the vulnerable child, but as one of the cascading stories that get activated when the system goes into distress. Have you ever wondered why you struggle with sticking to routines, finishing what you start, or resisting the pull of instant gratification, even when you know it's not aligned with the life you want to live? Maybe it shows up as procrastination, impulsivity, emotional outbursts, or a tendency to avoid anything that feels uncomfortable or demanding. You tell yourself you'll change tomorrow, but tomorrow always seems to require just as much effort. Underneath it all, there's often a deep-rooted resistance to boundaries, both other people's and even your own. You get frustrated, you push back against structure, and there's a part of you that truly believes you shouldn't have to tolerate distress in order to move forward. So if this sounds familiar and you're ready to take it on, let's get into the schema of insufficient self-control. Some of us basically never learned how to stay, not emotionally, not physically, not long enough to feel what was hard for us to feel or to follow through on what matters most. When discomfort hits, whether it's stress, boredom, shame, or grief, our system scrambles for the exit. We don't do this because we're weak. We do it because parts of us were never taught how to hold discomfort without collapsing or acting out. At the Liberation Place, we see this not as a failure or defiance. It's not a character defect or a personality flaw. It's a survival strategy. The schema of insufficient self-control forms when structure felt like punishment, limits felt like rejection, or emotions felt too overwhelming to sit with. So instead of building tolerance, our system learned to escape, and it often learned to do it fast. Escape then becomes a pattern, a problem with instant gratification, impulsivity, avoidance, procrastination, emotional blow-ups, or quitting before the work is done. Not because we don't care, but because the personality system doesn't believe that we can stay. This schema often emerges in systems where there was inconsistent discipline, emotional invalidation, or over-accommodation. If we weren't supported and taught how to sit with discomfort, whether it was emotional, physical, or relational, we didn't develop the muscle of self-restraint. We developed ways to relieve the pressure fast, usually through immediate gratification, avoidance, or release. When this schema is active, parts of us begin to resist structure. They push back against limits. They choose short-term relief over long-term growth. In the system, this might sound something like, I'll just do it later. I can't help it. This is too hard for me to do. I need to get away. It doesn't matter anyway. But these are not excuses, they're internal signals. They tell us that a part of our system feels trapped or overwhelmed and doesn't believe we have the capacity to stay. Without awareness, we follow those parts into patterns that sabotage the very things we say that we want: health, recovery, intimacy, even the direction we're traveling. From a parts-based perspective, the schema of insufficient self-control is often driven by impulsive, avoidant, and entitled modes. These parts learn to act fast to avoid pain, often before the full weight of emotion could register. They believe discomfort is dangerous or unbearable, and so they do whatever they can to get rid of it. Some of the most common modes include things like the impulsive child, who demands immediate relief, stimulation, or release; the avoidant protector, who procrastinates, numbs out, or physically avoids emotionally difficult tasks; the entitled child, who believes rules don't apply and that restriction itself feels like a threat. And often, lurking in the background, fueling everything we do, is the punitive critic, who brings shame to the system, reinforcing a deeper sense of failure, which then fuels more impulsivity. Beneath all of those modes is the vulnerable child, that part of us that never learned how to feel discomfort and to be okay. This part doesn't need to be silenced, it needs to be supported, because recovery isn't about force, it's about building emotional endurance. At the same time, it's very easy to confuse this schema with entitlement or even failure, but there are some pretty significant distinctions. The schema of entitlement says, I deserve special treatment and shouldn't have to follow rules. The schema of failure says, I can't succeed, so why should I try? But the schema of insufficient self-control says, I can't tolerate this moment, so I need to escape from it. It's not rooted in superiority or shame, it's rooted in avoidance. Understanding this distinction helps us approach the behaviour not with judgment, but with curiosity. When we stop labelling ourselves as weak or undisciplined, we can begin to see what's really happening. A part of us just doesn't feel safe in the discomfort of commitment, so it defaults to the quickest exit. For a long time, this particular schema was the context for one of my most familiar stories. stories. I'd often tell people as a child I ate candy alcoholically. In early adult life, and especially during the height of my alcohol use, I didn't just struggle with discomfort, I ran from it as fast as I possibly could. If I was angry, I'd lash out or distract myself. If I was overwhelmed, I'd quit. If I was sad, I'd numb. My system didn't know how to sit still in the emotional storm I was experiencing. When I was sober, this pattern didn't vanish, it just shifted. I found myself procrastinating, avoiding structure, breaking the promises that I made to myself, and at the same time, constantly wondering, why can't I just do the things that I really want to do? I was dominated by my own internal critics, loud and shaming, telling me I was undisciplined, weak, and a fraud. And that voice didn't motivate me, it shut me down even further. Looking back, I can now understand that I wasn't resisting effort, I was resisting pain. I didn't believe I could survive the emotional weight of doing hard things without the instant relief I'd always relied on. What looked like laziness was actually a system full of parts who didn't yet know how to stay present with emotional discomfort. And that's what I had to change. It wasn't about willpower, it was about building emotional muscle, about learning to pause, to breathe, to sit with urges without acting on them, to show those parts of me, especially the ones that thought everything would fall apart if I didn't escape, that we could actually stay. Recovery from this schema isn't about becoming rigid or forcing ourselves into endless discipline. It's about building the capacity to tolerate discomfort, emotional, physical, and relational, without abandoning ourselves in the process. This starts with mindfulness. Noticing when the urge to escape shows up and identifying the part that's activated. We then use the Raven skill to connect with that part, validating its fear and offering new options. We use the improved skill to sit with the discomfort in small and manageable ways, to gradually build up the tolerance for the uncomfortable feelings, not just in the mind, but in the nervous system too. We remind our parts that pain is not danger and that presence is not punishment. Then we take action, small, values-based, committed actions, not because we feel like it, but because we've chosen it. The more we do this, the more we build self-trust, the kind of trust that says, I don't always have to want to do the thing I'm about to do, I just have to know that I can. This is what emotional maturity looks like. This isn't about forcing discipline, it's about growing up emotionally, teaching our parts that we no longer need to be led by urges or fear, that we can show up, stay grounded, and follow through, not perfectly, but consistently enough to become someone we can trust. This is not about control, it's about capacity. It's not about punishment, it's about presence. And it's not about shame, it's about choice. Living the life we want to live doesn't come from doing what feels good in the moment. It comes from doing what's meaningful even when it doesn't. That's the kind of freedom we're here to reclaim. And at the bottom of the website page connected to this video, you're going to find a downloadable PDF that includes a worksheet designed to help you to build awareness around the stories connected to this particular schema. If you can, take the time to go through it. See if you can highlight what this schema sounds like when it shows up in your system. Start identifying the shifts you can make to change the things you want to change. I hope this video gave you some insight into the schema of insufficient self-control, where it comes from, how it shows up in our lives today, and how we can use the skills of DBT and Schema Therapy to reduce its impact on our ability to live the life we want to live. If you want to know more about this or anything else to do with what we do at the Liberation Place, come join the live online meetings that we facilitate for free each week on Zoom. I'll leave a link to the page containing more information about these groups in the description below. If you haven't already, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your community, and turn on notifications to get all the latest from me and the Liberation Place. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Take care, be safe, and be well.